Like most good war films, the meaning of Apocalypse Now extends far beyond a mere representation of war, in this case the Vietnam War. Loosely based on Joseph Conrad's 1899 novella Heart of Darkness, and with all the poetic nods to Dante's Inferno or Homer's The Odyssey, Apocalypse Now, in its irrevocable glory, dreamlike sequences, and savage horror, offers an honest, visual representation of the self in destruction.
This is the end, beautiful friend, the end. I'll never look into your eyes again.
You're watching Screen View Mirror. I'm your host Emma, and this is my take on Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, let's see what we have here.
With a budget of over $31 million, mostly taken out of Francis Ford Coppola's own pocket, and with its production and post-production effectively lasting 3 years, it's easy to see why Apocalypse Now is hailed as one of the greatest films of all time. I can't even begin to describe Storaro's cinematography, the soundtrack's blend of classical and rock, and even the chaos of the hectic, unpredictable production process itself. But although there's certainly a lot to focus on when watching this movie, today I'll be taking a closer look at the main character, Captain Willard, in an effort to assess what happens when someone with a Heart of Darkness travels to the Heart of Darkness. This is, after all, the story of a hollow man's odyssey, or as Coppola himself put it, Idiodyssey. So, who or what exactly is Captain Willard? In the context of Apocalypse Now, Captain Willard is essentially an American soldier in Vietnam. He's been given orders to travel up the Nung River to Cambodia and terminate Colonel Kurtz, who had abandoned the senior ranks of the U.S. Army and become a ruthless, almost cult-like tribal messiah in the jungle. Willard's journey up the river serves as the metaphor for his descent into hell. As he approaches his destination, most of the scenes we see resemble a kind of purgatory filled with death, debauchery, and darkness. Indeed, Coppola is famous for his use of low-key lighting to create chiaroscuro-like frames, and if we compare the lighting in the opening scene to that of the closing sequence, we notice that Willard achieved his odyssey into the Heart of Darkness. By the end of the film, the color and light had all but disappeared, leaving the viewer with a perverse, almost reversed Lord of the Flies type scenario. Yet the journey up the Nung River is not just a metaphor for Willard's fall into the inferno per se. This journey also symbolizes his psychological downward spiral into his own madness. It symbolizes the gradual intensification of his own sinister motivations, his own deranged mental hell. He doesn't just have a gun or a heart of darkness, he is the gun, he becomes the darkness. He's a mad killer with no remorse, gradually spinning out of control. From the very start of the film, we see the parallels between Willard and Kurtz. Although Willard hasn't yet grown to fill Kurtz's shoes, Willard's potential for insanity and his capacity for evil are self-evident.
Captain, she's wounded. She's not dead.
Yeah, monsieur.
The book says Captain... Ah!
I told you not to stop. Now let's go.
Therefore, Kurtz is but a foreshadowing of what Willard will turn into once he opens the gates of wrath. As T.S. Eliot wrote in The Hollow Men, he is a shape without form, shade without color, paralyzed force, gesture without motion. And although these lines refer to Joseph Conrad's Mr. Kurtz, the description also applies to Coppola's Kurtz, and therefore also to Willard. Up until the end of the movie, Willard is just empty and confused enough to have lost his humanity, but not deranged enough to yet become a tyrannical leader like Kurtz. Indeed, Willard is the hollow man, immune to pleasure and ignorant of death. When his boat is set on fire, he just looks disappointed. While a country is being destroyed, he's just sitting there, chewing gum. In 1925, The Hollow Man was written into history by T.S. Eliot, his poem expressing the emptiness that followed war, the cultural decay of it all, the fine line between faith and nihilism, the thin shadow between good and evil. Willard is an example of just how easy it is to trip over onto the other side of that shadow. Eliot wrote, "This is the Dead Land. This is Cactus Land. Here the stone images are raised. Here they receive the supplication of a dead man's hand." As Coppola said, Apocalypse Now wasn't about Vietnam. It really was Vietnam. So ultimately, in the simplest of terms, Willard is the expression of a possibility of a most gruesome, mad, evil, deranged, and senseless perversion that anyone can become. He's an example of what happens when you are your own enemy, when the destroyed does the destroying, when someone with a heart of darkness ventures into the heart of darkness. He doesn't succumb to evil because he doesn't need to. He already has the capacity for it and exercises that capacity to the highest degree. He is therefore the representation of people's capacity for evil. He embodies the absurdity of a violent odyssey, the horror of a self-induced hell, existing both within the mind and outside of it. How different, for example, is Charles Manson to Colonel Kurtz or Captain Willard? We can all become Willard and turn into Kurtz. Even Coppola himself said that the chaos of shooting the film put him in a state of mind not unlike that of Kurtz and Willard. So, to answer my initial question, Willard is Kurtz, Willard is Manson, Willard can be you, and Willard can be me. It's difficult to admit our own capacity for destruction, but logistically and psychologically speaking, anyone can become their own worst enemy. Anyone can destroy and kill. Most people just choose not to. So as long as we don't exercise our Willardian potential for evil, as long as we don't project the mad depths of our mind into actions, then we won't turn into Willard. Because Willard is a confused soldier spinning out of control and falling deeper into a hell that he himself helped create. Willard is the empty gun that lies beside him on the bed, waiting to be triggered. Willard is the hollow man that ruthlessly embraces death and destruction as a consequence of his hatred for life. Immune to both pleasure and danger, he is a prelude to Colonel Kurtz himself, a sequel to the depths of our own wrathful capacities, which we choose or refuse to exercise. He is the cause for the horror, the reason that when the world ends, it will not be with a bang, but with a whimper.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. Keep watching movies, keep reflecting on cinema and reflecting cinema to others, and keep enjoying the creative wonders of the world. I'll see you next week. This was Screen View Mirror.
Of everything that stands the end, no safe